Well, hey, y'all. Welcome back to our kitchen. Last time we got together, and about every time we've done this, I've talked to you about quality ingredients and quality tools and all of that. But you know, sometimes you just don't have the money, or you're just not in a place where you can get all the quality ingredients. So here's what I've got. I put all this out. We're gonna cook a meal that can feed about 6 people by the time we're done. Here's what I did. When I went shopping, I went to Walmart, and I went to a super Walmart, and I bought, here was my rule. I had to have ingredients. I bought the cheapest version of every ingredient I could buy, and we're gonna go with a totally cheap set of ingredients, but we are gonna make an absolutely awesome meal out of it. So watch this. So when you have a tough piece of meat and you're working with it, what you wanna do is cut it into smaller pieces. Now you might say, well, Pastor Mike, I got to feed some big people. Trust me, this is going to be fine. This small piece. We're going to put this piece of meat inside of some saran wrap. And the reason is we're going to have to pound it out. So look, you're just going to take a meat hammer like this. And I got to tell you, I know somebody's going to tell me I did this wrong, but this is the way I've always done it. It's the way my mama did it. It's the way I did it, do it, and it works. So you're you're gonna beat the sin out of this. Do you understand? I mean, you're just gonna make it flat. And when you get it all flat, as it does this, it's going to become bigger, and you're gonna feel like, you see how that's expanding even outside of the saran wrap I've got? You're gonna feel like you've got a much larger piece of meat here, and it's gonna feed as many people as you need to. You say, well, why do you wrap it in saran wrap? If you don't wrap this in saran wrap, when you hit it like this, it will splatter, and you'll end up with cow parts all over your kitchen, and you don't really want that. So do one side, then we're gonna flip it over, gonna do the other side, and you just wanna beat this till it's thinned out and you've broken down all of that tissue so that it will be tender. I'm gonna keep doing this. So we're doing this with this cheap cut of meat, right? And we're pounding it out to make it tender, because when you've got something that's not the greatest from the beginning, you've got to work with it, right? Well, look, let me just tell you a couple things. First of all, this is the secret of Southern cooking. Southern cooking these things started to happen because poor people or workers, or go far enough back, slave families would get the worst cuts of meat. They had to figure out what to do with it, how to make it edible and how to make it work. They had to take something that was not ideal and turn it into something that was ideal. And to be honest, that form of poor man's cooking from our history has literally now become some people's favorite dishes. People will go and pay money to get this at a restaurant now. In fact, let me tell you another one. The poorer families, the farm hands, again, go far enough back, the slave families, they would be given the worst pieces of the worst cuts of pork. Well, what did they do with that? They learned that if you would smoke it for hours and hours and hours, cook it low and slow with a lot of smoke, you'd take something that was barely edible and make it awesome. And today, you will go spend all kinds of money on barbecue that is smoked, and all that is a pattern learned by poor people who did not have good cuts, and they had to turn it into something usable. Now, a couple things I want you to know about this. This is the same thing that happens with us spiritually. When God comes to our lives, He finds us tough. He finds us difficult. He finds us unusable. The sin in our life has caused so many problems, and it's difficult to break that stuff down. The Apostle Paul, actually, when he's talking about how he himself applied self-discipline, he would say, I beat my body and I make it my slave, is the way he says it. Now, everybody listen to me. He's not. There is a form of worship. There is a form of discipleship. It's called asceticism, where people physically hurt themselves in order to worship God. God is not asking you to do that. That is not what the Apostle Paul's talking about. Do not hurt yourself to bring praise to God. God made you. He made your body. He loves you. He does not want you to hurt you. However, the imagery is important. Take something tough like this and pound it out so it'll be tender, and then we're gonna cook it a long time. It takes a long time. Look, it's gonna take a long time, and it takes the right tools. If you're gonna do this, this is one of my cutting boards, right? But you really can't do this on this cutting board because it'll bounce and it won't work. This is too flexible. You don't want to do this with the hammer on your countertop, because the last thing you want to do to your granite is take a hammer to it. I mean, come on, think about that. Think through it. So I've got this wood block here that honestly Robert made for me. And so I've got this block, and this is the perfect tool. Look, when you come to Christ, you come in a form that is not very usable for God and for his kingdom. But he will take sometimes uncomfortable moments and uncomfortable things, and he will train you. He will break down the toughness and turn what was unusable into something that is awesome. I'm going to finish this last one. Okay, so we've got our meat tenderized. We've got it all pounded out, and it's here. And we're going to now get ready to fry it. Now, listen, in cooking and in life, when you're trying to change things, there are stages to it. There are layers to it. You see, the Bible says that the old has gone and the new has come. But listen, that's not an instant process. That's not something that's just like an event. I often say this: salvation is an event. I went shopping, I bought all the stuff. That was an event. Cooking, holiness, is a process. Discipleship is a process, and there's layers to it. So what we want to do is we want to take this in all the layers. So we've tenderized the meat. Now, I love this idea. When we started going to Korean restaurants, I found out there was such a thing as meat scissors. I grew up, I didn't know there was such a thing. Y'all, this is awesome. You just see, that little tiny piece of meat we had pounded out to be that large. So you're gonna feed a lot of people with this, but watch, we're just gonna cut it out because nobody wants a piece that big. And so we're just gonna make a smaller piece. Now watch, layers. By the way, we did one of these cooking videos, and somebody from the church saw me grinding out the salt and pepper and sent me these. Y'all, this is awesome. Watch, I'm gonna salt that. Just ground it out for me. I love this, is like magic, y'all. So anyway, I'm gonna use something else because that didn't go fast enough. But we layer it with some salt first. Then I'm gonna dip it in a mixture that I've made here. And this mixture is nothing in the world but eggs and milk. So I put those two together. We're then gonna put it in the flour, and I know. People say you need to have one dry hand and one wet hand when you do this. Y'all, I don't understand that. I can't cook like that. I'm not that organized. I'm just gonna make a mess. So we're gonna dip this, and we're gonna move it into the frying pan, and we're gonna do that with all of these pieces. It's gonna take a while because probably we're gonna have 2 or 3 pans of fried meat by the time we're done. So let me get back to this. So for our flour, what we want to do is we got to put some flavor on this because this is going to be the coating that goes onto here. So I want to show you how this works. There's going to be salt, and look, you probably need to use more salt with this than you expect, but be careful. You know, you don't want to overdo it, but at the same time, you don't want to underdo it, or else this will have no flavor. And then, whoa, wrong side. Then we're going to use pepper. And you see the size of this? I use a lot of black pepper in this. I like a lot of black pepper. You don't have to do that. You know, I just love the flavor of black pepper, so I use too much, but I like too much. So then we're just gonna stir it, and we're just gonna get all that flavor in there. And again, it's a matter of doing all of this in layers, because every part of this you're gonna taste. You don't want any of it to be tasteless. Look, we are called in the scripture to be the salt of the world. And every layer of our lives does something. It affects people. It has a flavor it puts in society. And we need to make sure that every layer is properly flavored so that God can use us to the greatest extent possible. Now, what we're going to do is we've got a little bit of the grease. I've poured off some of the grease into a cup over there that was left over. But all this good stuff down in here that you're like, ooh, that looks awful. You need to throw that in the trash. No, that's good. That's good stuff. You got to use that. So the way we're going to use it is we're going to make gravy. So let's get the heat going here. And the way you make gravy, now look, everybody has a different way of doing it. It all starts with a slurry. That's what we're about to make. But I'm making gravy with this, the pieces of meat and the oil that the meat was fried in, because that's going to give it that flavor. It's also going to give it color. And so you kind of want to use both. I've also kept the leftovers, what I didn't use, of my flour, my batter mixture, because I can use this flour to make this gravy. So we just start with a slurry. It's very simple. We won't use all of it because look, when you're making gravy, if you put a whole bunch of flour in here, well, you better be ready for a whole bunch of gravy because it thickens up quickly. So put about that much. You've watched me long enough now to know that I don't measure things very much. And so we're gonna stir that around. Now, once we get this gravy made, and again, just say this, part of Southern cooking, part of cooking in a poor man's house is using everything. You don't waste anything. Why? Because when you don't have a lot, you got to use everything you've got in order to make it work, in order to keep people fed, in order to get everybody full. But if I make a spiritual application to this, God does this with us. There's not a part of you that you just throw away. No, He created you and He loves you. Look, the stuff that you hate about yourself, the stuff that you wish you could change, God put that there. And if it's hurting you, it's not because it shouldn't be there, it's because you're using it wrong. You've got to understand that God made you the way you are. Now, we have a couple of options here for our gravy. So we got it looking like that. That looks horrible. It's gonna look a lot better in just a minute. You can put water in this or you can put milk in this. A good Southern gravy has milk in it. Now, if I'm really cutting corners, I'll put water because that's cheaper. Just think about it. So I'm gonna use milk here. We're just gonna pour the milk in and you know, you say, oh, it's too hot, you're gonna scald the milk. Well, you know what? We're making gravy here. So you're gonna be fine. So we put the milk in and then I use a whisk for this and just get it moving around because I wanna get all of that stuff off the bottom. I want it to get into this milk and I want to get it all put together. As this heats up, it'll thicken up and it'll become the gravy we're going to use to pour over top of our country style steak. Now look at this. I've had to add a little more milk because I love how this stuff thickens up. So our gravy's thickened up, so I'm going to turn the heat off, put my whisk over here, and look, real simple. We're just going to pour this over top of this meat. And we are gonna, that takes something that would be good all by itself and makes it downright awesome. That gravy, it's good stuff. We've got our steaks, our fried steaks in here. We got our gravy on top of it. Now, here's what we're gonna do. I've preheated my oven to 350. Now I'm gonna wrap this up in tin foil. Now, what you really want to do is you want to keep all that moisture in there because it's all just it's gonna play together for, watch this, 2 hours. We're gonna let this cook for 2 hours. Yes, you say, well, it doesn't have to cook that long. No, you can eat it like it is right now. It's ready to go right now. It's just gonna be tough. And it's not really gonna be what but if you'll leave it in here for 2 hours at 350, that stuff will be so good. So wrap it up tightly, 350, and just put it in the oven. All right, so what we're gonna make now is some mashed potatoes. We're gonna start with that. So I've got some water boiling here. By the way, always salt your water. It really helps the flavor of the potatoes long term. So put some salt in there. We already peeled them earlier. We all got together over there and peeled potatoes. And you know, you don't have to peel potatoes at all. I could make rustic potatoes and they would just be, they'd have the peelings on them and that would be really good. But you know, to make it with this, I'm gonna go ahead and peel them. So we peeled them and we're ready for that now. So to be frank about it, potatoes is what's supposed to go with this meal, but if I were not making it for this purpose, I'd be making rice. I actually like rice better. And that's something that kind of freaks people out because, you know, I'm from the South, but when we were growing up, there was a period of time when the family was really quite poor. You know, Dad had lost his job in a recession, and Mom was working a couple jobs to try to keep things going. We just didn't have much, but what Daddy could do was farm, and so he grew potatoes and green beans. Now, y'all, I had only potatoes and green beans. It seemed like every day for like years. So when I got older, I didn't care much for them. So I don't make them that often, but when I do, we do it this way. Now we're gonna make green beans. Now, everybody listen to me. I am going to offend somebody's sensibilities here, but we're making mama's green beans, all right? I understand, I do, that you get good fresh green beans and you don't cook them long, you still want that crunch in them, and that's not the green beans we're making today. I bought the cheapest green beans I could find, frozen in a bag. So we're just gonna dump this into a pot and just have it there. I gotta put some water in there, okay? So we're gonna get some water. So we'll get this to start boiling. And look, now just again, stay with me now. This is gonna get weird, okay? So green beans, put it in a pot with water. And now I'm gonna throw some butter in there because I'm from the South and butter goes in everything. Obviously, some salt. You gotta salt green beans because the green beans, if green beans aren't flavored right, it's like going out in your yard and eating grass. It's just not worth it. So, and then some pepper. And again, I like a lot of pepper. You may not. Here's where it gets weird. You're gonna take a scoop of sugar. And we're gonna put, say about that much sugar. And just put that in there. Now, here's the other part where it gets weird and somebody's gonna yell at me. We're gonna bring this to a boil. And we're gonna let this boil, stay with me, for at least 45 minutes, if not an hour. You want it just before it's mush, but after you cook the bag out of it. Now, if I had fresh green beans, we might go a whole different route. But remember, we're going cheap today. So this is a cheap way to make a good vegetable and make it actually something you won't mind eating. All right, so now we're gonna do a dessert. Now, here's what I want you to realize. We're gonna have enough food here that I could probably feed 6 or 8 people. Total cost that I've got in this is less than 20 bucks, and I'm gonna be able to feed 6 to 8 people. And the most expensive thing I bought was that piece of steak that we had to work so hard with. Now we're gonna make what y'all, we're gonna make a chocolate eclair, but hold up. We're making a Southern, not gonna bake a fluffy piece of bakery chocolate eclair. And you're looking at the ingredients here. And again, what did I do? I bought the cheapest thing I could buy all the way through. So we're gonna start with cream cheese. It calls for sour cream, but sour cream, I just don't like sour flavor inside of a dessert especially. Some people do, but I was always the kid that didn't like sour candy either. Well, what I've let this do is I've let this come to room temperature, and I am butchering this package. I cannot get this to work. So, in there, you foul beast. So we're gonna put that in there. I brought that up to room temperature so that it's really soft. So then we'll raise this up and we'll turn it on. And the reason we're doing this is we're gonna let this cream cheese get kind of really mushed up before we start putting the milk and other items in. Okay, so I gotta turn this up. Okay, now we've got that down to not a block. It's just cream cheese now. So what we gotta do now is eventually we're gonna end up with 3 cups of milk in this. So I'm gonna take this 1 cup at a time and add it so that we can keep the cream cheese going so that we don't end up with cream cheese clumps. It's gonna have to mix for a little while with the milk in it, so it'll start to pull away and it'll just become more and more fluid-like as we do this. So And we gotta let it stop and push down the sides so you get all that goodness down in there. You know, when you're doing cheap things, when you're trying to save money and cook this way, it doesn't mean you can't do things that are good and things that bring joy. I gotta be honest. You're not gonna call this a chocolate eclair when I'm done, because you're gonna look at it and say, that's not a chocolate eclair. But this is a comfort thing for me. This brings joy to me because it reminds me, Mom used to make this and then we would go on trips. And when we were on a trip somewhere, she'd pull it out and we'd have this as dessert, maybe if we'd gone out to a lake or if we'd gone to a park or something. And this is just kind of comfort food for me. Listen, even in hard times, God brings joy. Remember what Paul said when he's in prison in Philippi? He's writing the letter to the Philippians, he's in Rome and he's in prison. He says, consider it all joy. Count it all joy. We can have joy even in the tough times. So we've got our milk mixture here. What we're gonna add now is, what we're making is vanilla pudding. And the cream cheese just makes it richer. It makes it just better. So now I'm gonna add the pudding mix, and we're gonna add 2 boxes. These are 88 cents a piece. 88 cents of just little bags of happiness. Because I'm telling you, when I get done with this, it is not a diet food, but you're gonna feel good about it. Okay, so we've mixed up our vanilla pudding here, and you can see it's firmed up. It's a nice firm vanilla pudding, right? So what we're now gonna do is we're gonna take this whipped cream that I made earlier. I will be honest with you. I thought about I should just buy Cool Whip since we're doing cheap and easy, but couldn't make myself do it. This kind of whipped cream is just so much better. So we're just gonna put this in here and we're just gonna fold those together. And folding simply means, rather than stir it like you would normally do, you're just gonna roll it until it all kind of gets mixed up together, and that's gonna be our filling. So, you're wondering, how does this become a chocolate eclair? Well, we do that by creating layers. So all we're gonna do is take graham crackers, and I'm gonna start the bottom layer of graham crackers with just graham crackers, because what I want at the bottom is kind of like a graham cracker pie crust is what I want. So we'll start this way, and it doesn't have to be pretty. Nobody's ever gonna see this again once it's in here. So it just goes in there and just let it stay. And you always have this little space over here left over, but look, graham crackers do this. And so that can go there, that can go there, and we'll break one more. And again, it doesn't have to be pretty. So there we go. Then we're gonna put a layer of this good stuff on top of it. You know what the hardest part of this is? The hardest part of this is spreading this out without moving your graham crackers all over the place. But that's only the first time. It won't happen next time, because they'll all stick together next time. So now we've got our first layer down, first layer of graham crackers down, and then we've got our cream mixture on top of that. What we're gonna do now is we are gonna take chocolate icing, and you're just gonna get, again, just cheap old canned chocolate icing. Say, can't you make that at home? Well, yeah, I could, but I'm not gonna. So I'm gonna have this. We're going cheap and easy. So you're just gonna layer it on there. You don't wanna go too thick with this, and then you're just gonna put that there. We're gonna make a whole layer now of chocolate covered graham crackers. And then after we get done with that, we're gonna put another layer of this, and then we're gonna put another layer of chocolate covered graham crackers, and then cover the whole top in chocolate, and it's just gonna be a country chocolate eclair. So we just made layer after layer. I want so badly to talk about the beauty of diversity while I do this, because you're just putting all these different things together, and you know, when you get them all together, there's a sweetness to it, and I don't know. Seems cheesy for me to talk about that, but then again, I guess the whole cooking video thing is cheesy in and of itself, so we'll go with it. Sometimes in our lives, we try to jump in and just do things too fast. When if we just take the time, let it meld together, let it spend a day in the fridge just all marrying up, let it spend 2 hours in the oven all marrying up, let it spend an hour on the stove, getting rid of the packaging, getting rid of the ugly taste that gets put into us by what happens to us in the world every day as we go through it. If you'll just give it time. The best thing you can do with God, and the best thing that you can do with your spiritual life, the best thing you can do with your marriage, the best thing you can do with your kids, give it time. Let it all kind of marry together, and as time goes on, it just gets awesomer and awesomer. Again, I'm not sure it's a word, but I believe it.